As the nation approaches its 250th anniversary, the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution that gave us our independence, we're at a uniquely important time to stop and reflect about what that revolution meant, what it was fought for, what the stakes on the ground were. It's so hard to understand what it could have been like for these militiamen and these people on the ground facing a tyrannical king that they were seeking to overthrow. It's important that we try to put ourselves in their shoes. It's an important time for us to reflect on the success of the American experiment, this all important experiment that has been a model for so many democracies throughout the world, and on the shortcomings and failures. I think so much of our conversation around American democracy exists in a vacuum, exists in a bubble. We have American exceptionalism, a belief that our democracy is different, that it is durable and special. And I think we are starting to see quite clearly the limitations of that belief, and that veneer starting to be peeled away by the very real ascendance of authoritarian autocracy in the United States, and by the real limitations of those guardrails that we thought would protect us. As we have these important conversations, I'm so grateful and honored to be joined by the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, Jeffrey Goldberg, whose magazine is putting out a really important issue this coming month. The articles are already starting to be published online that asks these questions, that grapples with them, with a series of 21 absolutely jaw-dropping and thought-provoking articles by a host of scholars and other leading lights processing these questions in this time. Thank you so much for joining us, for the incredible work behind this issue, and for all you have done. We're thrilled to have you here with us on Court Accountability with Legal AF. Folks, as you join us, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe buttons. It is how we get more and more of you into this conversation. Mr. Goldberg, can you tell us about the impetus for this issue, why you felt the need to put it out in this moment as Americans are grappling with our national identity in this very challenging time?
I mean, the impetus is simple. The Atlantic, this is not me saying this is the founders of the Atlantic saying this, that this is supposed to be the magazine of the American idea. The genius of the founders of the Atlantic, and I include in that Lowell and Emerson, Longfellow, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Harriet Beecher Stowe, all the people who live in and around Concord, Massachusetts. They wanted a magazine that would be the vehicle or a conductor, as they said, for the American idea. But the fascinating thing is they didn't define the American idea in their opening manifesto. Either they thought it was assumed. People would, you're writing in Massachusetts, it must be the first couple of paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence. That's a good place to start. I actually think, and this is actually a useful way to think, I don't know if it's true, but it's a useful way to think, that I think the editors knew that the American experiment is ever changing. Obviously, look, the magazine was founded in 1857. It wasn't such a great year to be hoping for stability. I think that they were thinking, we can treat this magazine as a place for arguments about what the American idea is. And, they were obviously small d democratic type of people who believed in civilized argument and disputation. So I think they created the Atlantic. I mean, they created the Atlantic, obviously, mainly and most urgently as a magazine of abolitionism. But the secondary purpose and the longer term purpose was to be the vehicle for discussion of the American idea. And so that's where we come in. And I think it's our responsibility to keep alive the original vision of what the Atlantic should be. And, obviously I do think, discount for self-interest here, but I do think that it's important to have a magazine in America that actually goes directly at the subjects that we're talking about. I mean, we have on this current issue, which I hope everybody will find and see, we have a 3-panel pullout. It's kind of like a Vanity Fair celebrity cover, but of Revolutionary War figures, which is like, it's
not all famous ones.
No. We pulled people from different stories in the issue, including people who were enslaved and people who are not known at all. And, and we threw in Rip Van Winkle for fun. That's our idea of fun. it's a very, very nerdy thing that we've done here, but I think our readers will take to it. But the larger point is that if anybody's going to do a study of where we came from, where we are now, and what that might mean for where we're heading, it should be the Atlantic. And so we called a bunch of great writers from different perspectives and said, tell us, various subjects, tell us, hidden stories of the revolution. We wanted to bring the revolution also back into history a little bit, not just myth making or solemn portrayals of long dead figures. We wanted to give it some flesh, and so we have really interesting piece, for instance, on the true complicated nature of King George. Just for fun, it doesn't advance the cause that we're talking about today, which is the extension of democracy for another 250 years. But we have all kinds of thinkers who are looking at this. It would seem almost criminal not to, at a time when questions we thought were settled and now up in the air, to try to bring some weight to bear on this subject.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really helpful to hear that background on the Atlantic and on the sort of almost abstract notion of American ideation, the idea of America and creating a forum for that you described, right? And what a big bucket that could be, how much fits into that, but also with a perspective, right, around abolitionism, which I think reflects a commitment to one vision of what America is and what it should be. And I think, that it reminds me of a lot of the fights that we're having now, and sort of the breakdown we're seeing in our society around the Constitution, its meaning, what the law means, what the rule of law means. And I think a lot of different communities sort of superimposing their ideas about what it means to be American.
Yeah, right? Go on. Sorry.
Go ahead. I mean, I sort of wonder, if how you're thinking about that in a moment like this, where it feels like we are seeing different factions making competing claims for what it means to be American.
So the interesting thing is, and maybe the metaphor here works vis-a-vis the magazine and its mission, right? Because the mission is seemingly superficially contradictory, right? You should be the vehicle for all kinds of ideas that help us refine what America is. But abolition, like, we're not screwing around. Yeah. We're not both sidesing. We're not good people on both sides of slavery here. Like,
no, I think these are the questions right now, right?
And this is what I'm trying to do. Obviously, there are people, certainly to the right and certainly to the left of me, who would say that the Atlantic isn't doing this. But because we talk about being a big tent, which we absolutely try to be. The thing about tents is that they do have flaps, right? Like, there's some things that are outside. The nature of a tent is that there's some things that are outside the tent. And there are some subjects that we're not going to both sides. And to go directly to your point, we're not a liberal magazine. We're not a resistance magazine, nor are we a conservative magazine. We're just a magazine, right? And we want different viewpoints. But I would say that we don't have multiple viewpoints on the rule of law, the importance of the rule of law in our magazine. There are certain American ideas that are up for disputation, and then there's certain American ideas that should not be up for disputation. Rule of law being one of them. I'm just pulling that as just one example. So there are certain things that we will not publish. And look, the truth of the matter is, unlike a lot of publications, I very happily publish people who are pro-Trump or have pro-Trump sympathies or obviously have sympathies with what we used to think of as conservative ideas. But I also believe in the fact-checking process. And in order to run those things, they have to adhere to observable reality. And that's been the challenge for a lot of publications. This is why we tend to sort of go into our own corners more and more. So there are things that we can do, and there are things that we can't do. It's very, very important for me that we remain a place where conservative ideas, and here I'm obviously delineating between what conservatism used to be and what people think of it as now. The Republican Party is not a conservative party, in my opinion. It is it's a party built around the cult of one person. But I don't think America is as strong as it could be unless you have conservative ideas and liberal ideas battling it out in the public sphere. Yeah. I'm going on at length, but you get the point. It's like there are certain principles that are inviolate. but within the framework of the things that are inviolate, there's a lot of different pathways America can go down to achieve its goals
Yeah.
and make itself better.
Yeah, I mean, and I think in terms of, a commitment to democracy, like a commitment to abolitionism, I think that's something that the Atlantic probably feels comfortable throwing its
well,
behind
this
democracy.
is why I'm comfortable. This is why we're comfortable. We endorsed candidates against Donald Trump. They weren't really endorsements of those candidates. They were endorsements against Donald Trump. And as I was very explicit about this the whole time, it's not about the ideas, such as they are, that the Trump administration or Trump in this first term especially was pushing forward. It's not the ideas. It's the corruption. It's the character. It's the authoritarian bent. It's all of those things. It's like if Hillary Clinton were running in 2016 against John McCain, Mitt Romney, Tom Cotton, I don't care, whoever, we would have. Well, there's no need to endorse. We're trying to be a fair and balanced magazine, to borrow a term from another media organization. There's no need to endorse. But this is not about ideas. This is about an authoritarian impulses that we have to keep out of American democratic life.
And I think everything we've seen from international experience teaches us that having a cross-ideological coalition to confront authoritarianism is the way to do that, right? And so that requires...
people we know are the ones who are dyed-in-the-wool conservatives, who are constitutionalists, or are advocates of democracy. They're the ones who've actually suffered. They suffer in terms of their own safety. They suffer in terms of reputation and opportunity. And so I have endless admiration for the kind of people who've actually stood up and said, no, this is not the Republican Party this is not the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan.
Some of the bravest people, I think, of this period that we're living through are the people that have been willing and brave enough to throw away their allegiance to that party and stand up against it.
Right, because they're maintaining their allegiance to what the party really is and to the set of ideas. I mean, if we had Liz Cheney's in public life, we wouldn't be where we are.
I think that's right, but it also opens a question that I think a little tension, I think, in what we're talking through here, which is a commitment to the rule of law on one hand, and then a commitment to a big tent strategy and some core principled commitments on the other. And I think that the moment we're living through now, and I think this is particularly complicated by the fact that the authoritarian apparatus has so much sway and influence over the Supreme Court, who in our system decides the meaning of the law, ultimately decides what the law means. And I think the quite demonstrable trail of evidence we can put together that shows that this judicial project, in complement, in lockstep with this administration, is moving us towards a world that is not compatible with democracy and that cuts certain people out of that tent very intentionally, right? And we can see, and all of this is rooted in deeply ideological projects that go back for centuries, in some cases to the Civil War or beyond that. And so I think the question that we have, particularly since rule of law is malleable, since rule of law is defined so much by what these justices tell us it is, how do we make those decisions when those things start to come into tension? Our traditional notion of what the rule of law means versus our deeply held principles about multiracial, multi-class democracy. Quinton O'Toole's essay in your piece, I think, highlights this really beautifully. He talks about how originalism has been sort of accepted as this way of deciding what the law means, and it's really bunk, and it has led to a world of oligarchy that it was what the militiamen were rejecting.
It's a great piece, by the way. No, the thing that I was going to say was that I personally have been more focused on, I mean, we obviously have people who are thinking about the Supreme Court here, and the legislative branch as a whole. I have been more focused on what I would think of as the abdication of the legislative branch.
Yeah.
Honestly.
By both parties.
And that's, I mean, and look, we have three branches. I've been reading a lot of Jefferson and Madison on this lately. Jeff Rosen has a new book coming out on the arguments between Hamilton and Jefferson, and there's a lot of good material about this there. The interesting thing about the legislative branch, to me, is that I don't understand why somebody would spend all that time and energy and money running to be in Congress. And having, I assume that when you run for Congress, you have some basic understanding of why Congress exists, right?
I worked there. I would.
Well, maybe I'm making a big assumption, and the assumption that you want to have power. I don't understand why you would abdicate that power willingly to an overly strong executive, right? And much less put aside the issue of dealing with fixes that may put the judicial branch back in some kind of balance, And again, I'm not making ideological points. I don't know enough to talk about that. But I think that everything is out of whack right now, and the country would work. Look, the system was built by pessimists, right? These people understood human nature. They understood.
They did seem pretty pessimistic. Maybe not pessimistic enough.
Well, no, but they were plenty pessimistic when everyone operated with what I like to think of as democratic self-restraint, which means, just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to do it. And just because you can say this doesn't mean you have to say it in politics. That's the revolution that Trump represents, is that everybody respected the guardrails to some degree. And by the way, when somebody broke through the guardrails, like Richard Nixon, A, they knew enough to be humiliated and embarrassed and be furtive about it, right? And B, there was a legislative branch to come and say, okay, well, you have to go because you just broke the rules. That's what the signal. The signal novelty of this whole era to me is this abdication of power that has actually been given to you. I mean, and you and I both know, you worked in the Senate, so you obviously know, I always have in mind Rob Portman as a classic, example of abdication. Like, Rob Portman knew better. A whole bunch of Rob Portmans knew better. And they just let this happen serially, and then here we are again. I know I'm not addressing your judicial branch.
Well, I mean, I think the one common thread is that the far right in particular, has developed checking mechanisms and incentive structures that really change the calculation for a lot of these folks, right? And I think a lot of their calculus has at this point is beyond thinking merely about their political futures, and has now bled into thinking about the welfare and safety of their families.
Well, yeah, that is very much true. And I don't know that democracy can survive the age of social media, and certainly AI, but that's a whole probably other podcast for you. Yeah.
But I think these are, as we're witnessing these manifestations of the breakdown of our social order, I think which reflects the unraveling Constitution, right? The fact that we don't have agreement across our disagreements about what the Constitution means or how to resolve our disagreements peacefully. I think it means that it's an incredibly important moment, Jeff, for folks to be processing and thinking through the questions that you raise in this article. This is a much like the one that you put out last year. I believe it was last year. Thinking about the stakes of the election. I think this is going to be one that is a resource for folks on people's bedside.
I hope so.
Really appreciate all the work that went into it, and you're taking the time to join us to walk.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe to our work here on Legal AF with Court Accountability. Stay mad, stay motivated, stay mighty. See you next time.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.